All right, good day, everyone. This is Carmen Arison from the Strathmore Municipal Library. I'm here to teach you about how to make a resin coasters. So first things first, we are dealing with resin. Some resins can be quite toxic. We are working with a resin that's from Trustex here in Calgary. So unlike some resins, it doesn't require a ventilator, and you can do this in your home. So this resin is going to be like a one-to-one product, which means it's going to be it's still going to be a good firm resin to create a coaster, but it's also going to be um, a little bit looser, a little bit softer. Always use your gloves when working with resin because it is quite sticky. You can get it on your skin, but I don't recommend it. It is a bit hard to wash off of your skin. So big thing is to always remember to use gloves. The next thing we want to remember is that when working with resin, it is self-leveling. And so with it being self-leveling, you need to have your products on a completely level table. So that's why inside your packages you have a level. So what I would suggest is you want to prepare your station, either put a drop cloth or a plastic bag down on your station, and you're going to use the level to make sure that your table is completely level. Um, so that is one of the key important factors when working with resin. If it is not completely level, you do run the risk of your coasters being slanted a bit. All right, so we're working with, you'll see there's two bottles that you get. One is the resin and one is the hardener. First things is we're just going to take the resin and you're going to grab your giant cup. I have here a cup that has the hardener in it because for this video, I didn't have the hardener in the bottle. So you're going to slowly pour your resin into your cup. The great thing about this is that we've already pre-measured everything for you. So with this video, you don't have to worry about weighing and measuring and everything. Everything is already pre-measured for you. Normally what I would do in the past is when I do resin pieces is I would weigh it out. So what you're getting right now is 8 ounces of both resin and 8 ounces of hardener. So I'm pouring this slowly into the cup here. And you're just combining it, just nice and simple, nice slow pours. And your cup, it's going to look like it's not going to fit inside your cup, but your cup is going to fit the full amount of resin that we have for you today. We've given you popsicle sticks in your package as well, and that's going to help you for scraping down the sides of your cup or your bottles to get just the rest of the resin out. Now we're going to slowly start mixing our resin. Now we're going sort of a gentle stir, but the most important part when you're mixing your resin is you want to make sure that it is fully mixed. So we're going roughly about 2 to 3 minutes of mixing. And right now, one thing that you want to make sure is you're scraping the sides of your cup and making sure you mix right to the very bottom of your cup. You want to make sure that resin is fully mixed. So as you can see, I'm scraping the sides of the cup here and I'm just mixing it gently to make sure it is fully mixed. Also, we try to mix it quite gently because we're trying to avoid having several bubbles in the resin. Now, with resin and bubbles, this is something that's just natural that happens. there are several different techniques that artists use to eliminate bubbles in their resin. You're welcome to sit your cup inside your sink with lukewarm water. You don't want it to be hot. If you sit your cup inside a sink of water or a tub of water, lukewarm water, that will help eliminate the bubbles within. You can sit your cup in water for probably about 10 minutes if you're looking to do that. And then the other is going to be a lighter that we've provided for you for popping the bubbles afterwards. You don't want to use a torch because a torch will destroy the molds. So that's why we've provided you with a lighter. Now, what I'm doing is I'm pouring my resin, my mixed resin, into 3 cups. We've given you 3 color of dyes for you to create your coaster. These dyes here are a resin dye, and they are quite handy. Right now, for this project, I'm using a purple, a green, and a white. Make sure you shake up your dye to make sure it's fully mixed. And then you're going to just do probably about 5 drops. It depends on how vibrant you want your piece to be. So I often will mix up my resin. I'll put a bit of color into my resin and I'll mix it with my popsicle stick. And if I'm finding that it looks quite transparent, then I'll just add a little bit more of the resin dye. So we've included the dye for you to use. You feel free to use it to mix it however consistency, however shade you'd like. You can also mix colors as well to create your own colors. I tend to just go with the colors that they have because there are so many fantastic colors available. Here you can see I'm just cutting off the tops of the dye. We'll have this done for you already. So I'm just pouring a few little dyes in there. And really when it comes to dye and your resin, it doesn't take a lot. But the resin dyes, again, it all depends on just personal preference and how translucent you want your dye. If you want your resin to be quite a rich color, then you use more dye. When it comes to tinting resin, there are several different products you can use. You can even tint your resin with acrylic paint. There's resin dyes. There's even alcohol inks. Alcohol inks are a little bit more trickier to use for your resin dyes, but it's definitely one that you can do. So as you see here, I had to add some extra green because my green was just a little bit too translucent than what I was looking for. So I've definitely added a bit more green to bring more vibrancy in my color. Next, I'm going to add my purple, and I am just in love. Oh, never mind, I'm doing the green here. Still looking for a little bit more green. As you could tell, I'm doing a voiceover on this video as I've created the video. It's just sort of an easier way to work with these tutorials. Yes, and then there's our purple one. Make sure you shake it. And this is just a fun project. The great part about working with resin is it hardens into it's almost like a plastic type of consistency. So resin coasters, resin products are great to have around small children because if they drop your coaster on the floor, it won't break. And that is one thing that I really enjoy working with resin is it's quite child-proof. Yes, and now you can see I'm adding the purple here, and it is just a stunning purple. And now I've only just done a little bit. We are going to add to these cups because there is still a lot of resin left in the main cup. This is just to start. I like to use the little Dixie cups because they're much easier to handle when we're working with the molds. All of your molds will be prepped and ready to go, so they will be nice and clean. All right, I'm just getting my molds ready here for pouring. There we go. So, and then when it comes to a design, this is going to be completely up to you. I want my design to be quite fluid. I want a bunch of different colors going on. So I always work with the very outer edge of the mold first, and I work my way in. So as you can see here, I'm just taking my purple and I'm pouring it gently around the outer edge of my molds. Now this is quite liquidy, quite sticky as well. So again, be careful when you're pouring it. It's always good to have a plastic bag underneath. And it is going to move on you. It's not going to stay in one spot. The mold is the resin is always going to move when you're pouring it. I'm just really in love with this color palette. And then I'm using a little bit of white. Now, if you really want to, you can feel free to add a little sparkle in your resin. We have not included that in your kit. But if you just simply go to the dollar store and buy a cheap $2 pack of sparkles, you can easily add sparkles and you're just mixing them into your resin like we are doing with the dye. So that's a great thing about resin. There's so many things that you can do when it comes to working with resin. You can always add different colors, different sparkles, different items, all sorts of fun products. So now I have to add, now that I've added that, I'm going to add some more of the dye. Make sure I shake it. There you go. Now, because the green I knew was quite translucent, I put a good squirt of the green in there, so I made sure I had more of a richer color of green in my resin. And now I'm going to do the purple. And I want to note that if you are having troubles with your coasters, or you're curious about working with resins, I do encourage you to, drop me a call at the library, 403-934-5440, and I would be happy to help you out and give you some tips on different techniques with resin. It is quite a fun product to work with. I find that it's so versatile. There's so many different products you can make. It's just a matter of like trial and error to make sure that the bubbles are the biggest issue when it comes to resins. It's just making sure that you're just take your time. When you're working with resin, the one thing to remember is that sometimes you're always going to get bubbles. So this is where we provided you a lighter. And as you see, I'm going really quickly over top of these coasters just to pop the bubbles with the lighter, because we don't want to heat up that resin too much. It's just to do a main little pop. I will also pick these up. If you feel brave enough, you can pick them up and let them pop onto your table, and that will also bring the bubbles that are on the bottom of your coaster to the top to help you get them to the top so that you can pop them even more. I like to kind of do pop my bubbles as I go, because this way we are working through layers. And now I'm putting some more purple, and as you can see, I've now used a richer color purple. Here we go. Wonderful. All right, and we're going to add some green in there as well. And the one thing I'll say is, when working with resin, you can work and try to create the designs as good as you want and as easy as you want, but really when it comes to resin, sometimes it does have a mind of its own. So I would say just go in and have fun and just play with it. And as you play more and more with resin, you'll come to learn the the little techniques that you can do to make it even more fun. So Here we go. I'm adding some white. My white's much more defined, which is going to be quite fun in my molds. So now that I've got most of my resin in my mold, I'm going to go through and I'm going to pop some more of my bubbles. And we've added toothpicks to your kit as well. So this is where you can drag a toothpick as well through your molds to create fun designs with your circles. It's all up to you. This one, we want you to have fun and be happy with what you're working on. So this is where I'm grabbing the toothpick and I'm just going to move my toothpick. Oh, that was me just grabbing bubbles here. That's just me popping. You can use your toothpick also to pop bubbles as well. See, and even as an artist, I know that I can still spill things and it just happens. All right, so now we're just going to add some more color. Want some rich colors in here as well. I tend to like add a lot of color. I want some more dimension in my coasters. Again, this is just completely up to you how you want to design these coasters. If you want, you can just throw all your resin in the coaster all with one bunch of different colors and just let it be and see what happens. That's a great thing about resin is it's quite unpredictable, but quite fun. The great part about is um, the next day finding out how beautiful they are. All right, so with here I've have all my colors in my molds. And now what I'm doing is I'm just taking my popsicle stick and I'm creating some flower shapes. And this is just kind of, I'm having just a little bit of fun here. It doesn't mean that this flower shape is exactly going to stay in the mold, but it is going to give the coaster just a fun little design in it. And this is where you can just have fun. If you want to create some flower shapes, you want to create some zigzags, you want to just leave it as is, you can do this. I just kind of like to play around with my different shapes, try some different shapes and see how the patterns will fall out in the end. And I'm just going to leave these shapes like this and I'm going to let the resin settle. So after you're completed this, the big thing that you want to remember is that it takes your molds about 24 hours to set. So once they are complete, you're going to leave them where they are. If you do have animals in the house, I would say that you keep your molds in a place where the animals can't get to it because it can be toxic to animals. Make sure you use your lighter really quickly over your molds to pop the remainder of the bubbles. And yeah, simply use your toothpick and drag your toothpick through your designs and create funky little swirly designs, whatever you feel like doing. Now, the next day, 24 hours later, you'll find that your molds should be set. They should be hard to the touch. As you can see, I'm knocking on them here. They are still a little bit pliable there, so they are a little loose. And to take your molds out, you're going to first just loosen out your edges of your molds. Always loosen out your edges first. Make sure you get your edges off, and then you're just going to pull it. And so this just gives you a good example of what the designs will turn out. Again, we're pulling all of the edges off. And this is where it's really crucial that you don't want to use torches or heat your resin up too much, because if you were to heat your resin up too much, your coaster would not come out of the mold. You would actually, I know just from learning from using resin that your mold, I've destroyed many molds where the mold will actually stick to the coaster and it just won't come out. So the big thing is that's why we've given you a lighter. You could do a little spritz of alcohol on top of your mold. It's completely up to you, but the biggest thing is not to use a torch on your mold because we don't want you to destroy those molds. Now I've removed the molds, and then you'll see once they come out, they should be nice and perfectly level. And each of you has been given a piece of sandpaper. And I like to use this just to kind of take off a bit of the edges. Sometimes we get a little spilled, and you'll notice that sometimes there's like little pickies and little bits of resin. If the resin is soft enough, you can just essentially just pick them right off the edges of your molds. This is what I'm doing. I'm just picking off the little bits of resin that have spilled over the edge of the molds. And the big thing is, like, when you're taking off all the edges, you just want to, this is just to clean them up. And then the sandpaper is for you to just help you soften up the edges where you've picked off those molds. So you might have some rough edges, and this is just a little fine sanding that you're going to work on. You're just going to sand the very, very edges of those coasters. I like to do just a very gentle sand. Please note that if you sand excessively on your molds, that it does dull out the sensation of the molds, and it can, you'll lose that shininess of the mold. So what I like to do is I'm just very careful about getting the very edge of these molds and just touching them up. Finally, if you want to, at the very end of your project, if you want, you can always take a paint pen, or not like a Jiffy marker or anything, but I would suggest, you know, if you wanted to, you can. Walmart sells a really beautiful gold leafing pen that you can get, and then you simply just color the edges of your mold to give them an extra little finish. That is just sort of a add-on that you can do if you wanted to finish off your molds. Your coasters. A lot of coasters look beautiful just the way they are without an edging on them. But that's just always sort of just a general little added touch that you could add to your molds as well. And with that, I'm going to thank you very much for listening to me ramble on a little bit about creating resin coasters. Again, it is a great fun product to work with. It does take a little bit of time to kind of learn to work with it. It can be a little bit tricky, but it also can be a lot of fun. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. And if you have any questions, you definitely feel free to call me at the library or send me an email at carmen@strathmorelibrary.ca. All right, everybody, you have a great day. Thank you.